So welcome to our second meeting this year, the 2025-2026 academic year of KMTA. Good to have everybody here, those of y'all in person and online. We've got an amazing presenter today, our new University of Tennessee piano professor, Dario, who's going to be presenting on Latin American piano music. So take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for hosting. I'm super excited to present on a topic that it's very close to my heart. This is the music that I was born with, and I am originally from Cuba. I did my bachelor in Cuba, then I came to the US. I did my master's at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and then I went to Indiana University for my doctorate. And I've always performed Cuban music and Latin American music. I recorded one CD of specifically unknown, or I guess unpublished Cuban composers. And I have another CD that also includes some music by Latin American composers. So it was also part of my dissertation topic. I'll give you 3 reasons to include Latin American music with the repertoire that you teach to your students. I think one of the main skills that you can develop with Latin American music that is not necessarily developed with other classical or more standard repertoire would be rhythm, because Latin American music is full of syncopation and polyrhythm, and in most of the classical standard repertoire you don't really find those challenges. So it's a great way to work with polyrhythms and syncopation with your piano students, and coordination between the hands. Another reason would be diversity, because we often get into that canon where everybody's playing very similar repertoire. So it's always interesting to showcase a different sonority and just different harmonies and rhythms in a piano recital. And I guess my third reason is just fun, because Latin American music, in many cases is inspired by dances, and it's just so fun to play and so fun to listen to. That I think it's totally worth including it in the repertoire. So the first thing that we would have to define is what is Latin American, and what do we consider Latin American music. And this is, let me see if this is working. Yes. Defining Latin America can be actually trickier than it looks, because in some instances we have composers that were born in Latin America, but they emigrated to other regions, and their music does not represent necessarily the rhythms that we associate with Latin American music. So would that be considered Latin American music? That's a question. In other cases, we have composers that are not actually born in Latin America. Let's say, like one composer could be born maybe in the US, but they are part of the Hispanic tradition. They are sons or daughters of an immigrant, and they're very closely related to those roots, and they actually compose music that is very rooted in Latin American traditions. So would that be Latin American, So yeah, it's always a little bit difficult to define, but in general, I guess defining Latin America as a region would include all of those countries that speak Spanish and Portuguese, Brazil being the major Portuguese-speaking country. And some of the composers that I will present today are actually born in those countries, and they're like very representative of those cultures. So one of the major scholars or musicologists that talked about Latin America was Gerard Beag, and he actually said, well, it's really hard to read there, but he said in a quote that the region is too vast and diverse to be interpreted as a cohesive musical region. So that kind of tells you how diverse it is. Like, we're putting that together under the same umbrella, but it's completely different. The music of Mexico from the music of Argentina, it's like we're putting that together, but it's very different and diverse. So there are some collective, characteristics of Latin American music that make it cohesive. The fact that all of those composers speak Latin languages like Spanish and Portuguese, they're mostly Catholic, and there are 3 major roots in Latin American music. Hello. And we will see those roots actually in some of the piano pieces that I will present today. Those are the African roots, the European, and the indigenous roots. And then of course there is diversity within those countries. Like you have different indigenous languages and different national identities that are also represented depending on the composer that you're performing. All right, so when we talk about Latin American music, there are some major trends that happened from the 19th century to the 20th century. And some of the composers that I will present today were very much identified with the European Romanticism in the 19th century. So some of them would sound completely like Chopin or Schumann, while others will already develop a national identity in the 19th century. Some of the elements that made those elements more iconic or more identifiable, like Latin American, would be the use of African elements like syncopated rhythmic patterns, pentatonicism, because African music is generally pentatonic as opposed to major and minor modes, and then some indigenous elements like imitations of nature, like bird singing and ostinatos in the left hand mostly. Okay, so in the 19th century I will talk about two composers in Cuba. They are Manuel Saumel and Ignacio Cervantes, and they both established I would say the national identity in the piano music of the 19th century in Cuba. They composed mostly short dances for piano. They're only 1 page long, so they're great for teaching. Sometimes they're trickier than they look, actually, but they included some of the rhythms that became standards for Cuban music, like the habanera rhythm, which is a... So yeah, those are, some of the major composers in the 19th century. And then in Brazil we have Chiquinha Gonzaga and Ernesto Nazaret. Those would be, I would say, the most important two composers in the 19th century in Brazil, and they sort of did the same thing with Brazilian rhythms. And they have also a lot of pieces for piano, pretty short, pretty short pieces, and they're wonderful also for teaching purposes. Okay, so I will start with, actually I'll play first one dance by Ignacio Cervantes. This is part of the cycle of 40 dances for piano that he composed. It's very interesting actually that the last 3 dances are for 4 hands, and they're extremely fun to play. We're playing those 3 dances in the Halloween concert that is coming up. Chilong and me, we're playing those 3 dances. And the characteristics of these dances are that they are very short. They're only 16 measures long, believe it or not. They're in binary form, and then generally we repeat the whole dance twice because it's so short that it makes sense. And in some cases we do variations to the rhythms in the repeat. So I'll show you two dances by Ignacio Cervantes. The first one is entitled, let me see if I have the score here. Well, it's really hard to read, but that's the first dance. It's entitled Los Tres Golpes, it means the 3 strikes. And it's just a very fun dance. You have some of the habanera rhythmic patterns. The second dance is entitled El Velorio, I think it's here too, yes, which translates as the funeral service. And it's a really funny dance because he has a story. It's like programmatic music. He has a short story that describes a scene in which the deceased person is being, it's not celebrated, but people are gathering next to the deceased person at the funeral service, but they start chatting and gossiping actually about that person who died until someone says, hey, this is a funeral, don't say that. And then everybody calms down at the end. So you can kind of see that story throughout the dance. Okay, so I'll play both Los Tres Golpes and El Velorio.
Do you want more light up there?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you. All right. So this one is Tres Golpes. And then the other one, this one is El Velorio, and there's actually a text. I don't remember if I have the English translation for the text. Let me see. Yes, I do. So the text that accompanies the dance says, "The first part of this danza represents the sad scene of a wake. The head of a poor family has died, and his friends who watch him are making the comments that accompany the second section's melody. Juan died suddenly, leaving his family in misery. He was a very good husband and father and was so humble. No way, he many times abandoned them to go gambling and drinking. Let's not talk more about that. He has died, God bless him." So yeah, that's kind of the story behind the dance. So yeah, that gives you an idea of sort of the major characteristics of Cuban music in the 19th century. And again, Ignacio Cervantes wrote 40 dances, just like those, for piano. And the predecessor of Cervantes would be Manuel Saumel, that's the other composer that I mentioned. I'm not gonna play another piece by him, but it's sort of the same style. It's a little bit simpler, actually. So maybe for younger students, I would perhaps choose something by Manuel Saumel instead of Cervantes. This is a little bit more difficult. And here's the name, in case you wanna see the spelling of this is how you spell the name, Manuel Saumel. That would be, it's considered to be the father of Cuban nationalism in the 19th century. He wrote actually more than 50 contradanzas, just like those. One page, 16 measures each. Yeah. Okay, moving on, I want to talk about another composer that is actually very famous or very well known in Cuba in the early 20th century. Yeah, mostly in the early 20th century, although he was born at the end of the 19th century. His name is Ernesto Lecuona. He was a very famous pianist. Actually, he toured all around the world as a pianist and composer. He actually emigrated to Tampa, Florida at the end of his life. He died in Spain. He was traveling to Spain and he died in a trip in 1962, but he actually was based in Florida. He composed a lot of dances for piano. The most famous cycles are 2 cycles for piano. One is the 6 Afro-Cuban dances, and I will play 2 or 3 of them today. And the Spanish dances. They are entitled Andalusia, which is the region in the south of Spain. And he sort of represented different cities in Andalusia in those Spanish dances. Some of the more interesting features of the Afro-Cuban dances are the imitation of African drums on the left hand. So in those dances you actually see a lot of syncopation and polyrhythms that are very difficult to figure out. That's what makes the music so cool, that's so interesting. So those are the titles, the individual titles of the 6 Afro-Cuban dances. Well, it's difficult to read, but the first one, La Comparsa, is his earliest piano piece from 1912. I think he was like 16 years old when he composed it. And it's the shortest one, so that's the one that it may be more suitable for younger students. It's only 3 pages long and it's less polyrhythmic compared to later dances. I'll play, well, this is an example of how he imitated the African drums on the accompaniment pattern of the left hand. And that's pretty much the rhythmic pattern of the left hand throughout the whole dance. So let me just play that one, La Comparsa. And, okay. So yeah, that would be the first one and the easiest one of the set. One main characteristic of Laguana was his virtuosism. So he had a very large hand actually, and he uses a lot of octaves and large chords in some of the dances. So that's one of the things that may be tricky when you're assigning this to younger pianists. But it's very simple in terms of the structure. It's mostly ternary form, like in this one. And often what he does is that he doubles the melody with octaves on the recapitulation of the A section. So I'll show you another example. I really like I'll try to play maybe 3 dances, so I won't talk much. But this one, the following dance, you see the pentatonic melody. So he's using a lot of black keys mostly because the African melodies are generally in pentatonic keys. finally, I want to show you this third dance from the set of Afro-Cuban dances because this showcases how he was also influenced by those ideas of polytonality that were emerging in the early 20th century. So in this case, we have one hand playing black keys on the left hand, so like mostly playing on the black keys, and then the right hand playing on white keys. And that idea of polytonality is really, I think in my opinion, just trying to showcase the percussive rhythms of the African drums. So the use of dissonances as a mean to represent percussive sounds. Yeah, this one is a really cool dance as well. And the three dances that I'm playing today are, believe it or not, the easiest ones from the set. The hardest dance would be Y La Negra Bailaba. That's the last one in the set. It's extremely challenging because it's full of octaves and jumps all over. So that one I would need to practice way more than the ones that I'm performing today. But yeah, they're all wonderful dances. I will maybe just play one of the Spanish dances. They are, perhaps the most famous one would be Malagueña. That's also the most virtuosic one, and it's pretty well known. Maybe I should play one of the simpler ones that could be maybe used for younger students. So Córdoba is one of the cities in the south of Spain, and this is perhaps the most easier to approach with younger pianists. It's a slower dance, and it's it's very, very beautiful. It has a ternary form as usual in those types of dances. Another interesting fact about the Spanish dances is that he imitated the guitar in some of those accompanimental patterns. Maybe not in Córdoba so much, but in another dance that I'm not actually playing today, Andalusia, the second one. You have in the left hand you have the like a guitar accompaniment. So yeah, it was inspired by flamenco dances and flamenco music in general. So yeah, I'll play Córdoba from the suite Andalusia. From the same cycle. This one is actually a shorter one, and it's great for competitions because it's it's actually not as difficult as it looks, and it's very effective. It's a pretty virtuosic piece. It's entitled Gitanerias, which means gypsy dance or something like that, and yeah, it's also in ternary form as usual in Lecuona. So. Moving on, I will introduce one of the major composers of the. It's okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you all are familiar with Villa-Lobos, at least you've heard of him. So this is one of the major composers of the 20th century in Latin America in general, and he's from Brazil. He wrote a lot of music for piano, and some of the music that he composed is actually very useful for piano pedagogy. I would think I'm thinking of two of the cycles that he composed for children. One of them is A Prole do Bebê, and that's a cycle where Polichinello is part of that cycle, and that's one of the famous pieces that he composed. But there's another cycle that is lesser known, and it's the Cirandinas. It's a cycle that is inspired by folk songs from Brazil, like folkloric children's songs from Brazil. And it's interesting that he composed the Cirandinas, and then for children, for like small, younger pianists, and then 1 year after he composed Cirandas. So it's not small anymore, it's Cirandas, and that one is for like much more advanced pianists. And it's interesting how the movements are literally the same. It's just updated or like more difficult version of the same transcriptions from the children's songs. But the piece that I will maybe play today belongs to the cycle of Baquianas Brasileiras, and this is one huge undertaking that he took, in which he composed different Baquianas Brasileiras for different instruments. He wrote one for piano and one for piano and orchestra. The one for piano is Baquiana Brasileira number 4, and the title Baquiana Brasileira refers to the fact that it's inspired by Bach. So it's interesting, like the dances or the movements have dual titles, that they have one title in Portuguese and one title in, I guess, in Italian, but it's because of the, preludio or something like that, it's a prelude. So it has a Western title and then a Portuguese title. The Baquiana Brasileira for piano has 4 movements. The one that I like the most is the last one. It's like a toccata, so it has the style of toccatas, like the ones by Bach, but it has the syncopation and the sonorities of the Brazilian jungle. He was trying to imitate those sonorities of ostinatos in indigenous music from Brazil. So you see a lot of hemiolas, and so he would take a 4-note pattern, like 16 notes, 16 notes that are grouped every 4 notes, but the pattern would be in 3. So takata, 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 takata within a 16 notes, succession of 16 notes. So I think I have I'm not gonna get too deep into the nationalist agenda, but basically one of the interesting things that actually I discovered when I was doing my dissertation on this topic is that he served as he served to the nationalist agenda of one of the dictators in Brazil, actually. The dictator Vargas, who ruled Brazil in the 1930s and 40s. He was actually promoting nationalism in Brazil, and Villa-Lobos was perfect for him. So they collaborated together, and Villa-Lobos was advertised and promoted even within the government, and so they both got something out of that relationship, right? That sort of explains that idea of promoting nationalism in the piano music as well. But anyways, I'll play the 4th movement, which is danza. So danza would be the Western name, and then miudinho is the Portuguese name for that title, for the 4th movement. Yeah, this is one of my favorite composers. He has, I mean, so many pieces for piano, and I think it's totally worth including some of the easier pieces maybe for in the repertoire of younger pianists. So the Cirandinas and the Prole du Bébé, those are two great resources. And then finally, I'm gonna skip forward to Argentina and Ginastera, because this is one of the major composers as well in the 20th century. He has fantastic works for piano. You're probably familiar with the Danzas Argentinas, which I'll play actually. But he also has 3 piano sonatas that are more advanced. I would say the most accessible piece in the repertoire, in addition to the Danzas Argentinas, would be the theme and variations on a folk Argentinian on children. What would be the English translation? I think I have it here. I know the Spanish title. So it's theme and variation on a children's folk tune. That would be the yes. Variaciones sobre un tema sobre temas infantiles argentinos. That would be the Spanish title. And that one is perhaps the easiest work, actually. It's not very well known, but it's worth exploring that one. Some of the characteristics of Ginastera music is that he tried to sort of represent the rural dances of Argentina in piano music. So it's not really about tango here, it's mostly malambo. That's the dance that he was inspired by. And it's a very violent dance. It's only for men, actually. For gauchos, which are like the Argentinian version of a cowboy. They dance with boots and with whips and even with swords, actually. So it's a pretty violent dance in 6/8, although it has that interplay of 6/8 and 3/4 as well. So because of this, the third of the Argentinian dances has so many jumps, because it's like trying to imitate those jumps and stomping on the floors by the male dancers in that sense. The first one in the set would represent an old cowboy. That's the title, the Danza del Viejo Boyero. So it's like the old guy who is riding the horse. And you have polytonales, so you have black keys on the left hand, white keys on the right hand. The second one would be a lyrical song, Danza de la Moza Donosa, in which you have the guitar accompaniment on the left hand, and you have the use of the symbolic chord, which is something that he actually named. And basically the symbolic chord would be the sound of the open strings of the guitar. So that's the symbolic chord. We see that at the end of the first dance as well. And then you have a lyrical duet on the right hand. And then the final dance, Danza del Gaucho Matrero, that's the one that I mentioned already. It's inspired by the Malambo dance, so all of that's the virtuosic jumping and rhythmic drive. So yeah, I guess I'll finish up with the Danzas Argentinas by Ginastera. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to share actually on the last slide a list of works that would be suitable for beginner and intermediate pianists. It's not a comprehensive list, but it gives you an idea. I've talked about some of those works today, and some of them you can actually find on IMSLP even, because they're like public domain actually. And in the last slide after this one, I have a QR code with a more comprehensive list that includes more advanced repertoire. This would be for younger pianists. And well, this is one example of an easier piece that is in that list. This is like for very beginner pianists. It's like a 5-finger pattern cycle of pieces by Oscar Lorenzo Fernandez. This is a Brazilian composer. It's a suite that's 5 notas, so a suite of 5 notes. And here's the QR code with a more comprehensive list of Latin American works for piano. I was telling Faye at the beginning that we are hosting the Knoxville Piano International Competition in February next year, and it will be dedicated to Latin American music. So there is a special prize or award for Latin American music. So if you have any student that enters the competition and you can, and you assign one of those pieces, it may be one of the winners. So that's another reason to include it in the repertoire. Okay, thank you so much for the attention.
He's going to be the YPS, I'll say YPS instead of Young Pianist Series. He's going to be the first recital in January. So, are you doing anything other like this semester or anything? I'm not really good at looking at the website.
Yeah, well, we're doing the Halloween concert on the 31st. I'll be playing 2 ensemble pieces, one with Qilong and the other one with the piano faculty at UT. I think this semester that's my only other performance. Next semester I do have a lot of recitals. I'm doing a recital here, and then I'm doing another recital at ETSU, and then some collaborative like ensemble recitals with the trumpet professor. We're just starting this duo, so we're gonna perform together and with a trio as well. So yeah,
Great.
I'm excited.
Doesn't he look like he's having so much fun?
Yes.
His personality really comes out.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy playing this music.
And they look like such fun pieces to play.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love playing them, and I think it's a great way to engage younger audiences and younger students with repertoire that is
And I think
more
it
fun.
makes us all want to practice more.
Right? Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I think we got time for some more questions if anybody else has any questions.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Who is your favorite composer?
From Latin America or in general? Oh, I
Or
guess
in general.
in general, I love Ravel actually. I do love Ravel. I would say that would be one of my favorite composers. I like Schumann very much. In Latin America, I would say Villa-Lobos is probably, if I had to choose one, it would be Villa-Lobos.
Yeah.
Because, also I didn't mention, but Villa-Lobos, it has completely different styles. The early Villa-Lobos sounds like Chopin almost. It's very romantic. Then he went through an impressionist stage, and there's a cycle of pieces entitled Suite Floral. So it's like floral suite with 3 movements, and it sounds like Debussy with a little bit of Brazilian music, sound, rhythms. So yeah, I love Villa-Lobos. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So much, I guess, I hate to say this, but don't we have to put the chairs up and everything?
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for a great meeting. Thanks again for the presentation. Have another round of applause. Thank you.